My son died at 29, and at his funeral, my wife pointed her trembling finger at me and screamed, "You killed him, Tyler." 3 days later, she cashed his insurance check and threw me out of the house we'd shared for 23 years. I thought I'd lost everything until I found the letter my son left hidden in his apartment. It said just one line, "Dad, if you're reading this, look at Mom. My name is Tyler Johnson. I'm 50 years old. And until that night, I was just an ordinary man, a husband, a father, a man who built bridges for a living. Now I build something else, justice, one truth at a time." The first thing I remember is the scream. Not the choir, not the pastor, not the smell of lilies or fried chicken from the fellowship hall, just Dana's scream echoing through that small black church in Atlanta, cutting straight through the hymn like a blade. "You killed him, Tyler. You killed our son." Every head turned, every body froze. Her finger trembled but didn't miss its mark. It pointed right at me. At that moment, the air inside Mount Zion Baptist felt like it could shatter. Miles's casket sat 10 feet away, closed, polished walnut with gold trim. I could see my own reflection in it, an aging man in a borrowed black suit, eyes swollen, hands shaking. And while everyone else was crying, I just stood there blank, because somewhere deep inside I thought maybe she was right. Dana's voice kept rising, raw and theatrical. "You were never there for him. You were too busy fixing other people's buildings to fix your own family. You built bridges for a living, but couldn't build one to your own son." The crowd gasped like a choir cue. I saw pity on some faces, judgment on others. Old Deacon Harris whispered something to his wife. She crossed her arms and shook her head. I felt every stare like a nail driven through my chest. I wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but guilt glued my tongue to the roof of my mouth. Because in a way, she wasn't lying. I had been absent. I'd spent years on job sites measuring beams and deadlines instead of birthdays and late-night talks. Miles grew up quiet, brilliant, always 2 steps away from me. I thought providing a roof and tuition made me a good father. Turns out, roofs don't stop loneliness from leaking in. The pastor tried to calm her down, but Dana collapsed dramatically against the pulpit, wailing. I stood there, my palms sweating, my throat dry, listening to people whisper my name like it was a crime scene. When it was over, I walked out of that church under a Georgia sun that felt too bright for mourning. Folks from the congregation gave me those church smiles, tight and fake. "Be strong, Brother Johnson. The Lord sees your pain." They didn't mean it. They just wanted distance from the man who killed his son. 3 days later, Dana proved she wasn't done. She walked into our Stonecrest house wearing her black morning dress and cold perfume, holding a white envelope. Her voice was steady now, businesslike. "The insurance company wired the payout," she said. $500,000. Miles listed me as the sole beneficiary. I didn't even know he had life insurance. She folded her arms. "I want you out, Tyler. Today." I laughed, short and bitter. "This is my house. My name's on every beam, every tile." She cut me off. "You can keep the house if you can keep your dignity when I tell the church what you did to that boy. I'll tell them how you broke him, how you ignored him, how your silence drove him into an early grave. Think anyone's gonna hire you after that?" Her eyes were empty, not grief strategy. I packed 2 duffel bags and left. My cousin DeAndre offered me a half-finished room above his auto shop in Decatur. I didn't even bother unpacking, just found a bottle of cheap bourbon and let it drown whatever pride I had left. The next 6 weeks were a blur of stale liquor and silence. I'd wake up around noon, drink until my hands stopped shaking, then pass out again. My phone filled with missed calls from clients, but I couldn't face anyone. I was that man, the one whose wife said he killed his son. Word travels fast in Black Atlanta, faster than gospel on a Sunday morning. The house payments fell behind. My business partner stopped answering my calls. Even my mother's church friends who used to bring casseroles when I was sick stopped coming around. Guilt is contagious. No one wants to catch it. Sometimes I'd look at old photos, Miles in his cap and gown, me with my hard hat, and wonder when the space between us became permanent. I remembered the last text he sent me, "We good dad." I'd replied with a thumbs up emoji. That was it.
The last words between a father and son. Then came the call that broke the fog. It was a Tuesday afternoon. My phone buzzed number unknown. I almost ignored it, but something, maybe the rasp in the voice, made me answer. Mr. Johnson, this is Clark, your son's landlord. Midtown Property Unit 3B. My chest tightened. Yeah, I hate to call like this, sir, but we need to clear the unit. Lease expired last month and I got a new tenant moving in. You got until 8 a.m. tomorrow to pick up his stuff, or it's all going to the curb. My hangover vanished. Tomorrow? You serious? I've been trying to reach the next of kin for weeks, he said. His mama said she didn't want anything.
Said to donate it or dump it. Dana's voice, even through a stranger's mouth, still managed to stab. I rubbed my eyes. I'll be there tonight. When the call ended, I sat in silence, the bottle sweating beside me. 8 a.m. or everything goes to the curb. My son's life boxed up and left for trash collection. I stared at the cracked ceiling, feeling something shift, a small stubborn pulse under the weight of whiskey and shame. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was guilt's twin brother, the one that fights back. I grabbed my keys, still reeking of bourbon, and whispered to nobody. All right, Miles, I'm coming. Outside, the December air hit hard, cold, clean, sober. I drove toward Midtown, past the ghost of my old life billboards. I'd built bridges. I'd inspected things that stood tall while my family collapsed. The city lights blurred in the windshield, and for the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel drunk. I felt awake. Because here's the truth I didn't know yet, sitting behind that steering wheel with shaking hands. The real funeral hadn't happened in that church. It was waiting for me on the other side of that apartment door. When I opened the door to Miles's apartment, the air hit me first, still heavy, like nobody had breathed there in weeks. The blinds were half drawn, letting in a weak line of Atlanta sunlight that sliced across the dust. Everything was just as he'd left it. The couch still dented from the last time he probably sat there, a half-empty bottle of ginger ale on the counter, and a hoodie draped over a chair that still smelled faintly like him coffee and cedarwood. I stood there for a long minute, just listening to the hum of the fridge and the creak of old floorboards. I'd come here to clean out my dead son's life, but I didn't even know where to start. So I did what men like me always do when we don't know what else to do, keep our hands busy. I found a couple of cardboard boxes in the hallway closet and started packing things by habit books, trophies, old gaming consoles. Each item was another jab to the ribs. Miles's Georgia Tech diploma still hung crooked on the wall. He'd worked so damn hard for it, I remembered how proud I'd felt that day, even if all I'd said was, "Nice work, son." I moved to the bedroom. Everything there looked frozen mid-sentence: laundry, half-folded laptop on the nightstand, one sneaker missing its pair. The bed was unmade, a few pages of some code printed and highlighted in blue marker. He'd been writing notes in the margins, sharp, clean handwriting like mine used to be. Then I saw it. One of the HVAC return vents near the floor looked off, just a fraction crooked. Normally I wouldn't notice, but I build things for a living. Crooked lines bother me like lies do. I crouched down, ran my fingers along the edges. Two of the screws were newer than the others, shiny, untouched by dust. "Miles," I muttered, "what the hell were you hiding?" I pulled out my old Leatherman knife from my jacket and loosened the screws. The grill came off easy. Behind it wasn't a duct at all, just a shallow recess cut into the drywall. My heart kicked hard when I saw the small gray metal door set into the cavity, a safe. I sat back on my heels, staring at it, my mind spinning. Why would a 29-year-old software engineer need a hidden safe? I tried the obvious. His birthday, my birthday, our house number. Nothing. I stared at the keypad, sweating a little. Then something hit me. Every fall. No matter how busy I was, Miles and I used to watch the Falcons season opener together. It was our thing, beer wings yelling at the TV. The last one we managed was September 12th, 2 years ago. I typed Euro 912. Click. The safe door opened with a quiet metallic sigh. Inside, neatly stacked bundles of $100 bills filled half the space. Maybe more, all wrapped with bank bands like it came straight from a vault. My hands went cold. Where had Miles gotten that kind of money? Tucked in the back corner was a matte black 2 TB solid-state drive, and on top of it a small white envelope with my name written in trembling handwriting, Dad. I sat cross-legged on the floor and opened it carefully. Dad, if you're reading this, I'm already in trouble. Look at Mom. Start with the drive folder. Kitchen cam. Don't go to the police yet. Trust your instincts. I love you. Miles. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, nothing like the steady script he'd had in college. I read it twice, maybe 3 times before the meaning sank in. Look at Mom. The words burned into me like acid. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then I reached into the safe and pulled everything out: the cash, the SSD, the letter. I shoved them in my bag, screwed the vent cover back, and stood up on shaky legs. The apartment felt smaller now, heavier. I glanced around one last time: the unmade bed, the blinking router light, the cheap lamp casting weak light across a life that shouldn't have ended at 29. When I walked out into the hallway, the evening sun hit my face. I stood there a second, gripping the doorknob, heart pounding. And for the first time since the funeral, I said it out loud, barely above a whisper, but clear enough for the universe to hear: I didn't kill my boy. No one answered. But something inside me, some buried pulse of the man I used to be, stirred awake. I drove back to Decatur with the bag on the passenger seat, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every red light felt like a threat. When I got home, I locked the door, drew the blinds, and placed the SSD on my desk. The moment I plugged it into my old laptop, the screen came alive, folder names filling the screen like ghosts stepping out of the dark. One folder caught my eye immediately. Cafe Sloan, clip Wonde and move. I double-clicked it. The screen blinked once, then filled with the image of a familiar face. Dana, my wife, sitting in a candlelit restaurant, laughing like she hadn't in years, her hand resting over someone else's. The other person leaned in, lips brushing hers. A woman. And that's when the world I thought I knew cracked straight down the middle. I hit play, and the restaurant bloomed across my screen: soft amber lights, linen napkins, a private room with a frosted glass door, and a little brass plaque that read Sloan, Buckhead Money. The camera angle was high and off to the side, like someone had clipped a pinhole cam to a planter. I didn't wonder how Miles got it. My boy worked with code. If he wanted eyes in a room, he'd find a way. Dana leaned in on the banquette, laughter curling out of her like smoke. Her hair was perfect, that soft press she got before big church events. Opposite her sat a woman with a steel-colored bob, a knife smile, and the kind of posture that says she never begs for anything. Sloan Rivera, beautiful in that realtor billboard way, tailored blazer, delicate chain, a face that photographed well and knew it. Dana touched Sloane's wrist and Sloane didn't flinch. They looked comfortable. Too comfortable for two people who were just friends from the gym, like Dana once said. I watched Sloane slide a manila folder across the table and tilt her chin toward the door. 2 more weeks, Sloane whispered. The mic barely caught it. We liquidate Anchorbird, close out the West End flip wire to San Juan. You've got the points covered on your side. Dana's smile was small and sharp. Already in motion. The policy pays fast if the ME signs natural. No back and forth. Good, Sloane said. I'm tired of Atlanta. I want ocean. I want quiet. Dana looked down at her wine, fingering the stem like a rosary. Quiet's coming. My chest tightened. I paused the video and stared at the frozen frame, my wife's hand resting casual over Sloane's. A woman I'd slept beside for 23 years had a whole other life I never saw. Not just secrets of the heart, secrets with spreadsheets and exit plans. I pressed play. Sloane leaned closer. And the boy. Dana's eyes shifted cold for a split beat, then softened into that performance she wore around churchwomen. Handled. I stopped the clip. The words sat on my screen like a stain. Handled. I opened the folder tree. There were more Buckhead clips, some Midtown bar footage, smiles, touches, whispered math about square footage and net proceeds. But a different folder kept pulling on me like it was humming under everything else kitchen cam. I clicked. The thumbnail showed my own old kitchen white subway tile I'd laid by hand one late Sunday. a dark roast coffee maker in the corner, and that faded Georgia Tech alumni mug Miles always insisted on when he came over. I swallowed hard and selected KC Days.move. The footage was clean angle wide. Morning light rolled in over the sink. Dana walked in wearing a gray robe, hair tied up, face calm like she was prepping a school lunch. She opened a small amber bottle, tapped 2 red tablets into a mortar, and ground them smooth with a slow, steady wrist. Not frantic, not nervous, rehearsed. She set the coffee maker, steam curled. When the pot finished, she took the tech mug poured, then lifted the mortar and let the powder slip into the black surface like silt into a river. She stirred with a spoon. No sugar, no cream, just like he drank it. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up, smiling. "He's coming," she said to the air, then placed the cup on the counter right where Miles liked to grab it. A minute later, he walked in. Hoodie, sleepy eyes, my boy. He kissed her cheek because he was raised right and reached for the mug because he trusted the woman who raised him. They talked about nothing. The game last night, the software release he was pushing at work, a joke about my stubbornness. He drank. She watched. He smiled at her. She smiled back like a mother. 8 days before he died. I backed away from the desk like something might crawl out of the screen and bite me. I hit pause and the whole apartment went silent except for my breath. I wanted to throw the laptop through the wall. I wanted to run to the church and rip the mic out of the pastor's hands and play that video on the projection screen while the choir looked away. I wanted to march down to Stonecrest and ask Dana one question, and one question only. How long you been practicing that stir? Instead, I kept my hands on the table and made myself breathe slow because men who move too fast break the case they're trying to build. I clicked out of Kitchen Cam and opened a different folder. Exports. Inside PDFs, CSVs, email archives. Miles had organized everything like a prosecutor. One subfolder was called Morel. I opened an email chain and saw a name that made my stomach go cold. Kent Morel, MD. The man who'd looked me in the eye after the funeral luncheon and squeezed my shoulder like he meant it. Family internist. Soft voice. No edge. There were several emails. A subject line sup. Another cardiac profile considerations. In one, Dana wrote, "He's jittery. Says he feels his heart kick at random. We need it to look like arrhythmia, not poison." Morel replied from a private account. Low dose staggered. Slow ramp. Avoid concurrent caffeine, but if he insists on black coffee, we can adjust mg/kg. He attached a PDF, digoxin toxicology Windows, non-therapeutic use, notes. I clicked on the PDF and scanned therapeutic ranges post-mortem redistribution mention of vitreous humor tests. I didn't know all the science, but I knew enough to see what they were doing using medicine like a disguise. There was a separate set of signal screenshots exported as PDFs. In one, a contact labeled K sent, "He's suspicious," switched to his coffee. "He still drinks black," Dana answered always. No sugar, no cream. Predictable. Then a thumbs up emoji. The room felt colder. I rubbed my hands together and moved to a folder named Anchorbird Holdings, LLC. Inside were spreadsheets, transaction logs, ACH exports. I recognized my own company's name on debits, Johnson Structural Group. My balance sheets had been bleeding for years in tiny paper cuts I blamed on slow clients and supply chain foolishness. But here it was, $500 on the 12th, $700 on the 23rd, $9 to $50 the next month, draining into Anchorbird through a bank I'd never used, routed to a mailbox in Chambly I'd never seen. Miles had annotated cells in bright yellow, Dad and Macon site visit couldn't authorize. Signature mismatch, see attached. Repetitive pattern equals laundering. I scrolled. The pattern held for 18 months. Little enough to go unnoticed month to month, large enough to matter in the end. A slow siphon like the dosing, little by little, piece by piece. Take the money, take the boy. I leaned back, palms on my knees, and stared out the window at the nasty little parking lot lights seeping through the blinds. I wanted to cry, but my body had used up those tears at the funeral where I stood there like a mannequin while a woman rehearsed my ruin. There was no room left for crying, only room for the next thing. The letter. the envelope I'd read once and tucked into my pocket like a talisman.
I unfolded it again, tracing the wobble in Miles's handwriting with my thumb.
I'd missed the line at the bottom, written small like he'd run out of space and refused to waste another sheet. P.S. If anything happens, talk to Jamal Ellis. He has an envelope for you. Don't call first. Go in person. I breathed his name. Jamal, Miles's friend since they were 15, the boy who ate half our fridge every Saturday after pickup ball, the young man who called me Unc and asked to borrow my socket set like it was a precious heirloom. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. He'd stayed in the back, head down, eyes red, walked out before I could grab his hand. Jamal, I said to the empty room. On the laptop, the Cafe Sloan window was still open, Dana and Sloan frozen mid-whisper. I closed it gently, like tucking a wicked child into bed, and opened a new folder labeled Audio. My cursor hovered. I could keep going. I could sit here all night and swallow more poison with every click.
Or I could follow my boy's instructions. I shut the laptop, slid the SSD into my jacket, and stood.
My legs felt steady for the first time in weeks. I turned off the lamp, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Because if Miles said Jamal had an envelope, that envelope mattered. If Miles said, "Look at Mom," I'd already looked. If Miles said, "Start with kitchen cam," I'd seen enough to last me 2 lifetimes. What I needed now was a person. Someone living who could look me in the eye and say the next right thing. Someone who loved my son enough to tell me the truth, even if it burned us both. I checked the time. Late. Too late for a social call, just right for a man who'd run out of time. I locked up, walked down the stairs into the cold, and slid behind the wheel. When I turned the ignition, my phone buzzed with a new notification. The SSD had installed a mirror utility, slick and automatic. Miles's doing, no doubt.
A single line flashed on the screen before it vanished into the background. Sync. Opening Cafe Sloan. Clip 01 mauve mirror complete. I gripped the wheel, let the engine settle, and whispered, "Lead me, son." Then I pulled out onto the dark street, pointed my car toward Jamal Ellis, and drove. The next morning I woke before the sun. No bourbon breath, no pounding head, just that hard-edge clarity that comes after too many nights of drowning and one night of deciding to breathe. The SSD sat on the desk like a loaded gun. I stared at it a moment, then opened my laptop. If I was going to dig, I'd do it clean. No half-drunk guesses, no sloppy prints. Just evidence chain of custody the way Miles would have wanted it.
I hit print all on the folders he'd labeled Anchorbird and Morel. Pages came out warm from the printer, stacking up like bricks of quiet rage. H transfers, routing numbers, digital signatures. I pinned each sheet onto the whiteboard I'd dragged out from the garage. Every transfer told a story. $5,210 on March 8th, $7,400 on April 16th, $11,900 on June 2nd, all of them bearing my company's signature, T. Johnson. Problem was, I'd been nowhere near a computer on those dates. I pulled up my work logs, the kind of records I'd kept for billing photos of the I-20 bridge retrofit, time-stamped texts from foreman, gas receipts from Macon. Evidence. I'd been on scaffolding 80 miles away when my signature approved those wires. I circled each date in red and drew a single line across the board. 18 months. Quiet bleed. They hadn't robbed me once. They'd robbed me every day. Next, I flipped to the SSD's second main folder, Audit, Miles Draft. Inside were subfolders labeled Chain Witness Affidavit. I opened the last one. It was a PDF, 3 pages watermark, faint in the corner. Draft Affidavit of Miles J. Johnson. I, Miles Johnson, being of sound mind, attest that my mother Dana Johnson and her associate Sloan Rivera have engaged in systematic misappropriation of company funds belonging to Tyler Johnson. I further have reason to believe they are coordinating with Dr. Kent Morel to falsify medical conditions and prescriptions in support of financial gain via insurance policy fraud. He'd even listed supporting exhibits, screen captures, bank trace IDs, a suggested forensic pathologist contact Dr. Ira Joss. My son had built a prosecution file while I was sitting in my office wondering why my ledger didn't balance. At the bottom of the affidavit draft was a note: if found deceased under ambiguous circumstances, Presume foul play. For chain verification, Jamal Ellis has retained physical corroboration. Jamal again. I dressed fast, jeans, work boots, dark jacket, and drove east through a quiet Decatur morning. The air smelled like wet pavement and exhaust.
Jamal lived in a squat brick duplex off Glenwood. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. He opened the door, halfway cautious eyes ringed red. "Unc," his voice cracked. "You okay?" "Not even close," I said. "Miles told me you had something for me." He hesitated, then stepped aside. The living room was small, clean TV muted on a pause 2K game. He walked to the corner, opened a desk drawer, and pulled out a manila envelope sealed with brown tape. "He gave me this a few days before." He couldn't finish. "Told me to keep it no matter what. Said if anything happened, give it only to you." I nodded, hands shaking just a little. "You open it." He shook his head. Didn't want to know. I figured if it came to this, it'd already be too late. I took the envelope heavy in my palm. "You did right, son." Outside, the wind had picked up. I sat in my truck, slit the tape with my pocket knife, and slid out the contents.
A small brass key bank tag stamped Decatur First Federal, Box 312. 2. A single page, Miles's handwriting again, tight and exact. "Dad, this is everything." Morell's prescriptions are traced through DEA lookups, fake sample orders tied to a closed clinic ID. The pharmacy tech left a note. "Keep this locked until you can prove the chain. Don't trust anyone who smiles too easy." At the bottom, M. I stared at that key until the edges dug into my skin. By noon, I was sitting across from a skeptical bank clerk in a gray vest. She looked at the key, checked her screen, and buzzed me through to the vault. The hallway back there was narrow, cold, the kind of place where even your breath feels like evidence. She pointed. "Box 312's on the left. You'll have privacy." I slid the key home, turned. The hinge moaned open. Inside were 2 file envelopes and a flash drive taped to a folded note. The note read, "If you're opening this, I didn't get to finish what I started. Don't let her say it was natural. She's already paid for the report." I opened the first envelope. Photocopies of DEA lookups. Physician queries logged under Kent Morell, MD. Multiple orders for digoxin and amiodarone, both cardiac glycosides, through a supplier that had gone out of business 3 years ago. Off record, no patient names, no billing codes. Each request time-stamped within the same week of Miles's last visit. The second envelope held a single torn notebook page, lined paper handwriting, feminine, rushed. No name, just the header from a pharmacy in Midtown. He orders digoxin samples off record. Says it's for private patients. I'm scared to report it. A friend. I sat there, the metal table under my hands shaking as if the whole vault vibrated. My son had traced the poison to its source. He'd mapped the money trail. He'd predicted the autopsy would be staged. He knew everything but the part where his father would finally believe him. I placed the papers back exactly as I'd found them, pulled my phone, and photographed each page front and back. Chain of custody, Miles's words echoing in my head. Then I sealed the box, signed the ledger, and walked out into the bright Georgia afternoon. For the first time, I didn't feel drunk or broken or even furious. I felt ready. Dana wanted quiet. I was about to make noise. By the time the sun rose over Atlanta's low skyline, I'd already decided 2 things: I was done drinking, and I wasn't dying ignorant. I poured the last of the bourbon down the sink, watched the amber swirl and vanish, like the version of me that had been drowning there, and went out to get a haircut for the first time in months. The barbershop on Auburn Avenue still smelled of talc and oil. When the clippers buzzed over my scalp and the mirror showed a clean line again, I didn't see a widower or a failure. I saw a man preparing for war. Next stop, Lenora Pike. Retired Assistant District Attorney, Fulton County. 58, sharp as a razor and twice as patient. She'd prosecuted corporate fraud cases when I was still learning how to read bridge specs. I found her in her backyard garden, pruning roses in a denim shirt and pearls. "You look like trouble walking back," she said, not glancing up. "I need help, Lenora." "You always did, baby. But this time looks special. Sit." We sat under a magnolia tree while I laid it all out: the safe, the SSD, the cafe videos, the digoxin orders. I handed her copies clean and tabbed. She read for 10 minutes straight, eyes narrow, lips tight. When she finished, she whistled low. "You don't come to me with mess, Tyler. You come to me with murder." "I need it airtight," I said. "No rumors, no maybe. I want it to hold in court even if I don't live to testify." She nodded. "Then you'll need a digital forensics expert. Someone the DA will actually believe. I know a woman smart, ethical, no nonsense. Priya Shah. She used to do cybercrime at the bureau before she got tired of the politics." Lenora wiped her hands on a towel and gave me a look that saw straight through the guilt still hiding behind my ribs. "You ready to do this the right way? No whiskey, no cowboy stunts." "Done with the bottle," I said. "I'm building bridges again, just not the concrete kind." She smiled. "Then let's go make some noise." Priya Shah's office was tucked inside a converted warehouse near Old Fourth Ward, clean glass walls, humming servers, and a half-dozen monitors running hash verifications. She was in her early 30s, petite eyes that missed nothing. "I heard you've got a live-wire drive," she said, sliding on nitrile gloves. "It's all my son's work," I told her. "He traced every dirty dime and every lie. I just don't want anyone calling it fabricated." She nodded. "Then we'll follow the book." On a whiteboard, she wrote a list in tidy block letters. "Mirror the SSD. Create an immutable image verified by SHA-256 hash. 2. Notarize a chain of custody log. Every hand that touches it signs. 3. Store the original off-site fireproof independent custody. 4. Draft ex parte motion to preserve relevant phone and cloud data de Morel, Dana Johnson, and Sloan Rivera. 5. If talk screens justify, seek narrow exhumation order." Lenora looked on, arms folded. "We'll also need a contemporaneous confession, something that shows intent, not just inference. If she laughs about insurance money, that's motive. But if she says she planned the death, that's a conviction." Priya added, "And you'll need medical corroboration. The digoxin samples tie to Morel, but we'll need toxicology confirmation either from preserved tissues or a court-ordered reanalysis." I rubbed the back of my neck. "You're saying I have to face her, get her talking." Lenora's voice was steady, almost kind. "You want justice, baby, not just revenge. Justice needs proof. You get her to speak her truth on record, and we can bring her down clean." She slid a small device across the table, a black button camera with a fiber mic no larger than a shirt stitch. "Battery lasts 90 minutes. Don't push her, let her gloat." I picked it up, felt its weight, light, surgical cold. Gloat is what she does best. By evening, the plan was set. Priya mirrored the drive, printed a notarized log, and locked the original SSD in a tamper-proof case. I carried the mirrored copy home like it was an organ transplant. On my way back down Edgewood, the city lights jittered off the windshield. I felt that first sliver of something like control, like maybe I could finish what Miles started. That's when I saw the black SUV. Big, tinted, nothing distinctive except that it had been 2 cars behind me since Priya's office and now sat half a block back, matching every turn. I tested it, took a left onto Irwin Street. It followed. Another right onto Randolph, still there. The old panic rose, quick, tight in the throat, heavy in the chest, but I forced myself to breathe slow. I pulled into a crowded gas station parked between 2 trucks and waited. The SUV rolled past, slow, the driver's face shadowed. Then it turned the corner and vanished toward the freeway. I sat there 5 full minutes before exhaling. When I finally pulled my phone from my pocket, a new text blinked across the screen. No contact name, just a Georgia number I didn't recognize. "Stop digging, Tyler. Let your boy rest." My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't type. Whoever sent it already knew enough to find me. I looked out across the gas station lot, the sodium lights bleeding into the fog, and said to no one, "Not a chance." Because if they wanted me quiet, it meant the trail was hot, and I just started following the money. I parked 2 houses down from Stonecrest, twilight bleeding out behind the pines.
The porch lights glowed soft amber domestic harmless, like the same lie I'd lived in for 2 decades. My pulse drummed under my collar. I adjusted the button mic on my shirt, the fiber lead running down to the transmitter tucked under my belt. In my ear, Lenora's calm voice crackled through the earpiece. "Copy check. You're live, Tyler. We've got signal. Remember, stay steady. Let her talk." I stepped out, gravel crunching under my boots. From the van down the block, Lenora and Priya were patched into the recorder feed. They'd have the footage mirrored to 3 drives before I even left the driveway. The front door opened before I could knock twice. Dana stood there in a cream blouse, gold bangles glinting in the porch light. Her expression flickered from surprise to contempt in a heartbeat. "Tyler, it's almost dark. What do you want? 5 minutes," I said quietly. "Then I'll be gone." She folded her arms. 5. Inside the house smelled like fresh paint and lemon polish, someone else's version of home. The walls were rearranged, family photos gone. She'd erased us like chalk. I sat on the edge of the couch. "You look well," I said. "New furniture suits you." Her lips curved. Somebody had to move forward. I nodded, eyes down. "Guess I'm late to everything, including being a decent husband." That pulled her in. She relaxed, eased into her chair, the same way a cat settles when it thinks it's already won. "I wasn't perfect, Dana," I said. "Worked too much, missed too many dinners. You were right about that." She tilted her head. "So why come crawling back now?" "Guilt, not crawling, just asking." I met her eyes. Did he suffer? The question hung there heavy as thunder. Her mouth twitched just a flicker, but I caught it. She looked away, fingers worrying the edge of a throw pillow. "You shouldn't ask questions you don't want the answers to, Tyler." I kept my tone soft, almost reverent. "He was our boy. I just need to know." She exhaled, slow, theatrical. "Sometimes the heart gives out. Sometimes people guide outcomes. So no, he didn't suffer long." Somewhere in the van, I knew Lenora's pen stopped mid-note. "Guide outcomes." I repeated. She shrugged. "You think the world just happens to you? Some of us make sure no autopsy slows things down." I felt my heartbeat climb into my throat. I forced my voice steady, like Anchorbird Holdings. That got her attention. She went pale, blinked hard. "What, and Dr. Morell?" I said quietly. "Sound familiar?" The mask cracked just a flash of raw fear before the smirk slid back on. "You can't prove a damn thing." My thumb brushed the edge of the hidden button camera. I didn't have to prove it, not tonight. I just had to let her keep talking. "Maybe not," I said. "But I've been learning, Dana."
About money trails, about policies, about the difference between an accident and a setup. Her voice sharpened. "You were never there, Tyler. Not for me, not for him. You built bridges and forgot your family. I built something with Sloan, a life worth living. There it was, the name, the confession, the motive." She stood suddenly, breathing hard. "You come in here accusing me, recording me." She lunged, fingers clawing at my shirt front. The mic wire tugged but held. "Get out. You think you're some hero. You're a washed-up contractor with guilt for a personality." I stepped back toward the door, heart pounding. "Goodbye, Dana." Her eyes flashed pure venom. "Let him rest, Tyler. You owe him that much." I walked out before she could see the tremor in my hands. The porch air felt electric, like right before a storm. Down the block, the unmarked van idled under the trees. I didn't look back. Inside the cab of my truck, the phone buzzed. Lenora. "We got it all," she said, voice crisp. "Intent concealment, acknowledgement of collaboration. We filed tonight preservation order for her communications exhumation petition and an emergency motion to seal Dana's passport." I stared through the windshield at the dark house porch light still burning like a false beacon. "Do it," I said, before she gets another chance to disappear. For the first time since Miles died, my hands stopped shaking. At dawn, Atlanta still slept under a skin of fog, but the courthouse on Pryor Street was already awake.
Inside Judge R. Calloway's chambers, the lights burned low, coffee steamed, and a single signature changed everything. Order granted. Preservation of electronic communications approved. Exhumation of the remains of Miles A. Johnson approved. By 8:15 a.m., the county coroner's crew stood in Southview Cemetery under a pale gray sky, tarps flapping, cameras clicking. I stayed back near the fence line beside Lenora. My hands were cold even in gloves. She didn't speak. None of us did. When they lifted the casket, the sound was more metallic than I remembered. Lenora squeezed my arm. "This part's for science," she murmured. "Hold steady." The post-mortem tox panel came back 48 hours later, shorter than anyone expected. The report was written in the language of truth that doesn't lie. Elevated digoxin concentrations, vitreous humor 0.9 ml, myocardium 7.4 mg, pattern consistent with surreptitious chronic dosing. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation lab confirmed the chain and signed off. No contamination, no ambiguity. My son hadn't died of heart failure. He'd been poisoned methodically, precisely. Lenora called it the hinge moment. Science had spoken, and the law was ready to follow. She coordinated with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office that same afternoon. Warrants dropped in triplicate. Dana Johnson for first-degree murder and insurance fraud. Sloan Rivera for conspiracy. And Dr. Kent Morrell for falsification of medical records and accessory after the fact. By nightfall, news helicopters hovered over Stonecrest. Reporters shouted questions from behind the yellow tape as Dana was escorted out in handcuffs, still wearing that same cream blouse. She didn't look at me, standing across the street. 3 miles away, Sloan was arrested, leaving a property showing in Buckhead hair. Immaculate sunglasses on lips pressed thin. Dr. Morrell didn't even make it that far. Agents picked him up at his clinic before noon. By the next morning, Morrell had flipped. Hard. In his statement, he described everything: the unlogged digoxin sample requests, the forged chart entries, citing genetic predisposition to arrhythmia, and the night Dana handed him an envelope thick enough to buy silence. He turned over his burner phone and screenshots of his Signal Chats conversations, where Dana reminded him, "Keep it clean, Doc. Family history. No autopsy. It's routine." That line, the "no autopsy," hit like a spike. Exactly what she'd said to me in the living room. Lenora stood at the press conference podium the next afternoon beside the DA, her steel gray curls pulled tight, voice steady. "We have evidence establishing motive opportunity and a medical falsification designed to obstruct justice. The victim, Miles Johnson, died not of natural causes, but of premeditated poisoning administered over time by his mother." Microphones flashed. I stayed off stage listening. By evening, my phone buzzed non-stop. Church members, neighbors, people who'd stared holes through me at the funeral now left long voicemails full of apologies. "We're so sorry, Brother Tyler. Didn't know the whole story. God bless you, we're praying." Pity felt worse than blame. But the tide had turned and there was no stopping it. Then came the curveball. Sloan posted bail, 200 grand wired through a property trust, and a high-end defense attorney who showed up in red bottom heels. She was out before the evening news. 2 days later, my cousin Rennie called, voice uneasy. "Ty, listen, someone came by my garage asking how to reach you. Said her name was Rivera. Left a message." I felt my jaw lock. "What message?" "She said she could make this right. Said there's a cash settlement waiting if you retract your statements and keep things quiet. Didn't say how much, just enough to start over." I let the silence hang so long, Rennie whispered, "You still there, cousin?" "I'm here," I said finally. "And you tell her next time I don't settle with killers." That night, Priya texted a photo from her encrypted drive, a redacted court filing labeled "Sealed Proffer, Confidential Witness A." She'd gotten it through her old bureau contact.
Below the blacked-out lines was one chilling sentence that hadn't been redacted properly.
Half a mistake, half a warning. Witness A asserts knowledge of a fourth conspirator involved in financial structuring and electronic misappropriation. The individual who taught Dana Johnson how to move funds undetected. I read it twice. Fourth conspirator. Someone else had been helping her steal from me deeper in the system long before Sloan or Morell ever joined in. Someone who knew my accounts, my habits, maybe even my password rotations. And that meant this wasn't over. Not yet. The courthouse on Pryor felt colder that morning, like the walls themselves were waiting for something heavy to end. The headlines had been running for weeks, calling it the Stonecrest poison case. I walked through the metal detectors wearing the same dark suit I'd worn to my son's funeral. This time I was walking in for truth, not burial. The grand jury had moved fast. 3 indictments. Dana Johnson, malice, murder, conspiracy, wire fraud. Dr. Kent Morell, falsification of records and accessory after the fact, cooperation pending. Sloan Rivera, conspiracy and financial fraud. Lenora moved like a general through war unflinching, composed every document tabbed and color-coded. We tell the story like Miles built it, she told me, step by step, fact by fact. No theatrics, just the truth. The trial lasted 12 days. Everyone felt like a year. Priya took the stand, first steady, clinical, walking the jury through digital preservation and hash integrity. She explained how Miles's SSD had been mirrored under seal, verified by 3 independent digital fingerprints, each one matching perfectly. There was no tampering, she said, eyes fixed on the defense table. The data is authentic. Then the medical examiner followed, gray-haired, crisp-voiced, explaining digoxin levels and how therapeutic becomes toxic when intention replaces care. He pointed to a chart. These values cannot result from natural metabolism. This was administration over time planned. Next came the pharmacy tech face, half hidden behind her hair. She identified the anonymous note from the Decatur safe deposit box as her own handwriting. He told me to log it as samples. I knew it was wrong, but when I saw the news about Miles Johnson, I couldn't sleep. Then came the financial layer. Bank compliance officers traced Anchorbird Holdings through the wire paths, microtransfers from Johnson's structural group accounts into a shell company registered to a Chambly mail drop. Priya displayed screenshots from Miles's spreadsheet overlays, time-stamped against Tyler's verified travel logs. The defense tried to poke holes, suggesting grief made me unreliable, that I'd pushed my son away, that this was revenge disguised as righteousness. Lenora let them build that illusion before she gutted it with the timestamps. Mr. Johnson was in Macon at 2:47 p.m.
On March 8th, she said, pointing to a fuel receipt.
But an ACH authorization was logged from his IP address in Atlanta at the same time. Unless he can teleport, that signature was forged. Each time they tried to question my sanity, she brought them back to the numbers, the labs, the code Miles had left like breadcrumbs. Then came Jamal. He spoke softly, eyes wet. He told them about the night Miles showed up terrified, about the envelope he was told to protect. He said if something happened, it wouldn't be an accident, Jamal whispered. He said his mom was planning something and that his dad would need proof. When Lenora showed the kitchen cam footage, the courtroom fell silent. The grainy video of Dana stirring that powder into the Georgia Tech mug played on the overhead screen. A few jurors looked away. One woman pressed a hand over her mouth. The prosecution's final exhibit was the wired confession from my visit to Stonecrest. Audio clear, time-stamped, authenticated by Priya's forensic logs. Sometimes the heart gives out. Sometimes people guide outcomes. You think the world just happens to you. Some of us make sure no autopsy slows things down. Dana's voice filled the room. Her tone wasn't angry. It was proud. Sloan sat stone-faced beside her, whispering to her lawyer. When her turn came to testify, she claimed ignorance. I thought it was all just talk, she said. Dana handled everything. I never knew about the pills. Lenora let her speak, then brought up one email from the mirrored drive. From Sloan Rivera to Dana Johnson, subject. The boy. Is he going to talk? Because if he does, all this is for nothing. The silence afterward was its own verdict. Dr. Morell, gaunt and hollow-eyed, took the stand next. He confessed everything, the off-record sample orders, the falsified cause of death report, the payoff. She told me her son had a bad heart like his grandfather. I believed her, he said, voice breaking. Then I didn't. But by then, I'd already signed. When the jury went out, the courtroom exhaled all at once. I sat in the back, staring at the flag above the judge's bench. I didn't pray. I'd done all my praying years ago and run out of words. They were gone 6 hours. When they came back, nobody moved. The foreman read, "On the charge of malice murder, we find the defendant, Dana Johnson, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charges of fraud and wire theft, guilty. Sloan guilty on conspiracy and financial fraud. Dr. Morell guilty but cooperation noted sentence reduced to 20 years. The judge's gavel came down once hard. Dana didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead, mouth-tight, eyes glassy like something had finally cracked behind them. Sloan whispered to her attorney, then looked back at me, cold, hollow. I didn't look away.
Lenora put a hand on my shoulder as the marshals led them out. "It's done," she said. But it didn't feel done. It just felt quieter. Outside, the media swarmed again, shoving mics, asking how it felt. I said nothing. I just breathed. For the first time in years, I took a full breath and didn't taste guilt. 2 years passed like rain through a storm-drained foundation, built cases, closed life, trying to move on. Then one Friday morning, as I was reviewing intake forms at the foundation office, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Johnson," a woman said. "This is Warden Blakely at Pulaski State Prison. Dana Johnson is in the infirmary. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. She says she needs to unburden herself, something about the money. She asked for you." I stared at the phone, heart gone still. Even dying, she was still holding secrets. Pulaski State Prison's infirmary smelled like bleach and ghosts. The guard led me down a short corridor lined with barred glass, the buzz of fluorescent lights above us. I hadn't seen Dana in 2 years, not since she'd been sentenced. I told myself I was there for closure, but the truth was simpler. I needed to hear every last lie before I buried her for good. She looked half her size, skin, gray eyes too big for her face. Tubes trailed from her arm to a slow-dripping IV. The same hands that had stirred poison into my son's coffee now trembled as she lifted them from the blanket. "You came," she rasped. "I'm here," I said. My voice came out flat like it had walked in before I did. Dana gave a slow, bitter smile. "I was hoping the old pride wouldn't keep you away." "Sit." I stayed standing. "You said you needed to unburden yourself. Start talking." Her laugh was dry, hollow, always straight to business. "Fine." She coughed hard, caught her breath. "You remember that policy I made Miles take out? The one you thought was just motherly planning?" I didn't answer. "I set it up," she said. "Talked him into it after that promotion at the firm. I told him every smart young man needed insurance, told him I'd handle the paperwork." Her mouth twisted into something like pride. He never even looked at the beneficiary page. "Signed wherever I told him." I swallowed the bile that rose. "You forged it." "I managed it," she said. "Same thing, really. But that's not why you're here." She shifted in the bed, eyes glinting with something meaner than regret. "You ever wonder how I figured out your passwords? Those e-sign authorizations, the account routing. You think I taught myself ACH transfers between your contracts? I felt the air tighten. "Who helped you?" I asked. She smirked. "You already know him." She leaned closer, breath faint and sour. "Caleb Hughes." I blinked. "My cousin Caleb, your cousin. Your partner. The man you trusted to co-sign every project and balance your books while you were off playing Engineer of the Year." Her voice rasped low, venomous. "Caleb built Anchorbird with me. He forged the authorization, set up the shell through his buddy down in St. Simon's. We laundered the transfers right under your nose, and he took his cut, 90,000, maybe 100, said he had gambling debts. Said you'd never notice because you trusted family." My hands went numb. I gripped the bed rail just to stay upright. "You're lying." She gave a weak laugh.
Oh, I wish I were. He was the one who taught me how to move the money without the bank flags. Miles never found him. That's why he's not on the drive. Your boy died thinking it was just me. The room went quiet but for the beep of the monitor. She coughed again, dry and violent. You wanted the truth. Tyler, there it is. I didn't do it alone. Her head sank back on the pillow. You built bridges for a living, but you never saw the one collapsing right under your house. I left without a word. Behind me, I heard her whisper, almost tender. We're all guilty of something, aren't we? She died 3 days later. Lenora called it what it was, a dying declaration. But declarations aren't enough without paper. If Caleb's the fourth conspirator, we need records, she said, pacing her office. Something that ties his fingerprints to the fraud. Otherwise, her words die with her. Priya dug in that night. She pulled old email archives from Miles's mirrored drive folders labeled Anchorbird Temp Fund Sweep CCH. After hours of parsing metadata, she found 3 routed messages with a familiar sender address, chugs@johnsonstructural.com. He'd used my company domain, my cousin, my partner. A forensic accountant joined the hunt, a quiet man named David Ngo, the kind who saw patterns where others saw numbers. Within 48 hours, he had it 3 microwires, $15, $300, $27, $800, and $47,000 traced from Anchorbird Holdings to an LLC registered in St. Simon's Island called Sea Glass Developments. Owner of record Caleb Hughes. That was all the DA needed. The indictment hit Monday morning. They found Caleb at the yard leaning against a rusted excavator, chewing on a toothpick like it was just another workday. When the detectives read the charges, wire fraud conspiracy, aiding and abetting, he laughed. Y'all serious, Tyler's family. He knows I'd never. Then he saw me step out of the pickup behind them, and his face changed. You, he spat. You really gonna do this to Blood? You did it first, I said. He sneered. You were never there for family. Never had time for us, but plenty for your bridges. So yeah, I took my piece. Call it back pay. They cuffed him while he was still talking. In court, his arrogance drained fast. The prosecutor laid out the ledger math, the emails, the routing numbers, the matching IP pings from his office computer. Caleb's attorney tried to play it small, just bookkeeping errors, misplaced trust, but the pattern was too precise. Under pressure and the promise of a plea, he folded. Admitted to creating Anchorbird's back channel and taking a $90,000 finder's fee. Said Dana had promised to pay off his debts and keep him out of it once she got the insurance money. The judge's gavel fell and I didn't stay for sentencing. Outside the courthouse, the winter air felt clean but empty. 5 years of lies, 3 trials, 2 funerals, and now a cousin in shackles. Justice didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing on the last girder of a bridge after the storm washed everything else away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then the voicemail icon popped up. I hit play. A young woman's voice, shaky but warm. Mr. Johnson, I hope this is really you. My name's Naomi Brooks. I read about your son. 2 years ago, I was in a bad place. My husband was poisoning me with heart meds. Your foundation helped me. Your son's story saved my life. Can we talk? I stood on the courthouse steps, the traffic humming like rain, and for the first time in a long time, the weight in my chest shifted, not gone, but lighter. Miles was still saving people, even from the grave. It's been 7 years since the trial. Atlanta's changed, new condos, new cranes, the same summer humidity that sticks to your lungs, but I'm still here holding the same compass my son left me. The Miles Johnson Foundation sits in a narrow brick building off Auburn Avenue, right between a corner barbershop and a coffee place that plays Coltrane on vinyl. We don't have marble floors or a board of directors. What we have is a purpose and a waiting room that's never empty. We help the kind of people who don't make headlines, mothers who've been gaslit into signing away their savings, men whose wives drain their accounts while smiling through Sunday service, seniors quietly poisoned by caretakers who call them sweetheart, quiet crimes. The kind that hide behind pressed suits and church smiles. That's where we come in. Legal aid, emergency housing, forensic consultations when a family doctor's report doesn't smell right. I work the intake desk most days. People are more willing to talk when they realize I've sat in their chair. Sometimes when the noise dies down, I walk into my office, close the door, and open the bottom drawer. Inside, wrapped in a faded handkerchief, is the 2TB SSD my boy built. The case is scratched now, the label half peeled, but it still holds every byte, his voice, his notes, his fight. I don't keep it as a wound anymore. I keep it as a compass. Every Friday before sunset, I drive out to Southview Cemetery with a cup of coffee and a folded chair. Miles's headstone sits under an oak where the light hits soft and gold in the evenings. I read him the week's intake cases, tell him how many people we helped, how many we're still chasing. I tell him about Naomi, the woman whose voicemail started all this, and how she's now our outreach coordinator running workshops for women in crisis. Some days I just sit there and breathe. I used to think revenge would heal me. It didn't. It burned clean quick and left nothing but smoke. Purpose, that's what stayed. When I speak to the young men from the neighborhood now, the ones who come to the Foundation's Saturday program, I tell them the truth. Their fathers never said out loud, "Being a man ain't about paying bills, it's about paying attention. The world breaks quieter than you think. If you don't listen, you won't hear the crack until it's too late." They nod, some pretending they understand, most not yet ready. But a few come back week after week asking how to be present without being perfect. I tell them I'm still figuring that out myself. Last year, the city dedicated a new park near the old Fifth Ward Viaduct. They asked me to help design a memorial for families who found justice after loss. Now there's a bronze sculpture at the center of that park, a father and son reaching toward each other across a small stream, their hands almost touching the water flowing between them like time. I ran my fingers along the father's palm the day it was unveiled, and for a second I felt Miles's hand in mine again. My kind of engineering now isn't steel or concrete, it's connection. Most evenings when the office quiets down, I stay late typing case notes while the city hums outside. The light from the street lamp filters through the blinds, catching dust like slow snow. That's when I hear the door open, the small chime we installed so folks know they're safe to enter. An older woman steps in, hair-pinned, neat purse clutched tight. Her eyes dart around, then land on me. "I'm sorry to bother you," she says, voice trembling, "but I think my daughter-in-law's been giving my son something. He's not himself lately." I study her face, fear and confusion I know too well. I stand, grab my notebook, and motion toward the chair across from me. "You did the right thing coming here," I tell her. She hesitates. "Can you help him?" I smile, slow and certain. I know the signs now. I reach for my jacket. "Let's go."